Ciao, travelers, and welcome to our episode. We are on episode 5. I did double check because I said it was episode 3. I can't believe we are this many episodes deep. After this one, we have one more episode left until the episodes that start in the new year, 2026. So, before we start our podcast, we're in it now, let's do some trivia. In which country did sumo wrestling originate? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is Japan. Oh, you know I love cats. Which of the big cats has the loudest roar? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is a lie. I believe most people would have said that. At 114 decibels, it can be heard from 5 miles away. Which city was the home to the world's first skyscraper? Now, this is skyscraper in a contemporary term because you could say many other monuments have been skyscrapers, but this is the skyscraper that we know today. The large tall buildings like you see in Hong Kong, New York, Tokyo. And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is Chicago, the third largest city. Okay, well, let's get into this. Really interesting. I was teaching class and Oklahoma came up. And of course, Oklahoma is known for its geographical panhandle. So I decided, let's do something about panhandles. And the geographic term is actually a salient. So there's a salient, a military term, but this geographic term refers to the political and physical geography. A salient refers to a narrow extension or protrusion of land that projects outward from the main body of a state, region, or physical feature. Unlike a regular border, which typically follows smoother or more continuous lines, a salient forms a distinct panhandle or bootheel that points into or surrounded by the territory of neighboring states. These geographic irregularities are not accidental. Instead, they're the result of complex historical processes, natural constraints, treaty negotiations, and cultural factors. Understanding salients helps scholars, or us geographers, travelers, interpret how political borders develop, why certain regions hold geopolitical significance, and how geography influences human settlement and state relationships. So pretty much, and if I say this again, I apologize. Where a peninsula is surrounded by 3 sides of water, a salient is usually surrounded by 3 sides of a different country or a different state. So the most common one that we know is Oklahoma salient. It could be Alaska, that panhandle, the Florida panhandle. I'm talking from the United States. People would recognize those. So a little back history. I think I mentioned this in the stands episode. I obsess over shapes of countries and anything in geography I get obsessive with. And Afghanistan has a very interesting panhandle, which we did discuss in stand, but we're going to get a little more into this. And again, when I was teaching U.S. geography, Oklahoma came up and someone said, oh, why is there a panhandle? So panhandles or salients are very popular in my life. Okay, so a salient can arise from several causes. One of the most common reasons is historic treaty making, especially during periods of rapid colonization or territorial negotiation. Territorial claims were often drawn using imprecise maps, resulting in awkward or unusual shaped boundaries that persisted even after more accurate mapping techniques emerged. Another cause is natural geography, such as rivers, mountain ridges, watershed lines, which frequently serve as borders. These natural features do not always align with neat shapes, and following them can create narrow extensions. Salients may also form when states seek access to resources such as rivers, minerals, or strategic corridors, prompting boundary makers to carve a thin strip of land that connects the main territory to a desired area. In some cases, salients form around culturally distinctive populations, ensuring they remain part of a specific state rather than being divided among multiple countries. Finally, salients may be remnants of incomplete territorial exchanges or results of conflict where ceasefire lines solidified into permanent borders. So let's go to the one. Again, I was obsessed with the shape of Afghanistan. One of the most striking examples of geographic salience is the Wakhan corridor in northeastern Afghanistan, which is one of the most dangerous crossings, that and the Darien Gap. This long, narrow strip of land stretches roughly 350 kilometers eastward towards Tajikistan to the north and Pakistan to the south, eventually reaching close to China, and that's the key, close. The origin of the salient lies in the 19th century geopoliticals during the Great Game, a period of rivalry between the British Empire and the Russian Empire. Afghanistan, positioned between the two powers, served as a buffer state. To prevent Russia and British India from sharing a direct border, diplomats created the Wakhan corridor as a geopolitical cushion. This salient is significant not only for its historical roots, but also for its physical isolation. High mountains and limited infrastructure have kept it sparsely populated, demonstrating how geopolitical and natural barriers combine to shape regional geography. And Afghanistan, especially in the modern history, has really been a hotbed of activity because it's transitional between larger nations, and larger nations that are playing affect nations that are in between, like Afghanistan. And this still occurs today in that region. So this is another one that is in Africa, Namibia. Another famous salient is the Quirky Strip, a narrow finger of territory extending eastward from Namibia into southern Africa. Its unusual shape is the result of German colonial ambitions in the late 19th century. German Southwest Africa, modern-day Namibia, desired access to the Zambezi River in hopes of gaining a navigable route to the Indian Ocean. So again, this is the scramble for Europe, it's called. Europe invaded and took over and colonized these countries in Africa, and they wanted resources, they wanted access, and Europeans, decided what the boundary should be, not the locals that lived in these regions. And again, that's why there's a lot of turmoil in Africa. A major reason is because these boundaries don't reflect cultural or economic regions, so it's very fragmented. Although this aspiration proved unrealistic, the river is obstructed by waterfalls and rapids. The territorial claim created a permanent salient. Today, the Quirky Strip is geopolitically sensitive, bordered by Angola, Zambia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe, and its narrowness complicates administration, transportation, and security. So if you think about it, it's kind of like your body and blood flow. The outside areas, and especially like your phalanges, your fingers, they're the last place to get blood flow. So, they get cold quick or something happens, a cut, it doesn't heal as quick as other parts. That's the same thing when it comes to geography. In regions that have elongated or salient, it's harder to manage because you're at the end of something, and around it, it's nothing that's attached to any other part of the country. So it does make it a little more challenging for these regions. Okay. So now we are moving in, we're still in Africa, the Gambia. So that's a country. Presents one of the world's most unusual country shapes, essentially following a single elongated salient that penetrates deep into the Senegal. This shape follows the course of the Gambia River, reflecting the historical importance of river-based trade during European exploration and colonization. When British and French colonial powers carved up West Africa, Britain claimed the land along the river, valuable for navigation and trade. resulting in a narrow territory, sometimes only a few kilometers wide. The Gambia salient-like shape influences everything from national identity to transportation infrastructure, with settlements naturally clustering along the riverbanks. It also creates a complex relationship with Senegal, which entirely surrounds the Gambia except for its coastline. So this is another example of how the United Kingdom at the time was the world power. We talked about that in the last episode, and that's why the prime meridian is where it's at, because the UK was the number one dominant empire country at the time. So they played this little game with, again, the people in areas of Africa in order to keep a dominance over another country. Now, this one is what I mentioned in class. In the United States, the Oklahoma panhandle is a classic example used in geography classrooms to illustrate a salient. This now rectangular projection stretches west from the main part of Oklahoma and is the result of shifting territorial laws and compromises in the 19th century. The area, once known as no man's land, did not initially belong to any U.S. state or territory due to restrictions on slavery and boundary rules established by the Missouri Compromise. When Oklahoma approached statehood, lawmakers attached this region to form the state's distinctive shape. Although the salient does not hold the same geographic tension seen in other examples, it illustrates how legal and political decisions can produce long-lived geographic irregularities. Okay, so slavery was a big issue, and also Texas Texas agreed to come into the United States if it had slavery, if it was allowed to have slavery. And what this no man's land was, that small gap that allowed it to be under 36.5 parallel, and that's what the Missouri Compromise was. And this allowed Texas to become a slave state. All right. And it's north of the 36°30 latitude line. Okay, let me correct that. So it's very interesting how that worked out. Again, geographical players, people in power, they will do this to land to make sure they get what they want, or people make sure people don't get what they want. All right. So salients also occur in areas with rugged terrain, mountain ranges, and these regions around the Tumen River where China, Russia, and North Korea meet include natural narrow salients created by rivers, meandering paths, and negotiation over access to the Sea of Japan. So some of it is geography based, just how the water flows, how the mountain range goes. So summarizing it up, salients are more than just irregular shapes on a map. They are reflections of human history, natural geography, political compromise, and cultural evolution. Whether forged in the diplomatic rivalries of empires shaped by the contours of rivers and mountain ranges, or defined by modern political needs, salients tell complex histories about the relationships between states and their landscapes. So, important to know. All right, let's get into this. Okay. What is the name of the most famous fountain in Rome? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is Trevi Fountain. How many landlocked countries are there in South America? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there are 2, Paraguay and Bolivia. And what are the 2 top languages in North America? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Spanish and English. So I got this under control. So our little goodbye. Remember, if you know geography, you know anyone. And my new techno Christmas beat is out called Jingle Jingle. So please stream now and share. Ciao for now, travelers.